Well, howdy, Chris, and what's going on, workforce? Brian here to talk about a interesting topic that has been going on in the Discord, and specifically I was tagged because y'all want to hear my thoughts, especially with the Xbox and the 7.0 announcement. But before we dive into that, I do want to say to Chris, happy anniversary, happy birthday, as we have now are celebrating 8 years as content creators here on YouTube. So first, thank you guys who are watching this video for all the love and support over 8 years. I'll talk a little bit at the end of this video about some of the thoughts, some of the changes I'm going to be bringing in year 8 to the channel, which you've already kind of seen over the last couple of weeks. So I think it's going to be a fun time nonetheless. But let's dive into the topic. Let's bring up the message. Newspin Slag says, hey all, I have a big question. I'd especially like to hear Brian's thoughts on it as the biggest advocate I can think of for Final Fantasy XIV coming to Xbox. Thank you guys for the recognition. I absolutely have been that, and still on cloud 9 that is finally happening. Now, do you think that the story reset and new platform will mean Dawntrail will remove the requirement to complete all of the previous content? Do you think a fresh new Xbox player will be able to start at level 1 in the new world and get the option to go back and do ARR later, or do you think that they will keep the formula the same? Now, for me, it seems like the absolute perfect opportunity to provide an alternate leveling path and a chance to skip a full ARR Endwalker story. They probably won't get another opportunity like this for another decade. I know veterans have a lot of history with the other characters in the story, but is all of that so heavily ingrained into the game that they can't give players a good new player experience? So excellent question. Let's go ahead and dive into it. First and foremost, when it comes to the solution for what they've crafted, it's New Game Plus, right? New Game Plus is existing as a concept, I think is such a smart idea. I would still like to see improvements. I wouldn't mind experiencing some other reason to do New Game Plus, but it is an important kind of tool that allows players to kind of step through that story once more. But New Game Plus isn't the perfect solution, isn't it? It isn't a one size fits all, solution, because yes, if you step into, assuming that they go off of everything that they've done up to this point and they do that going forward, if you go off of that, like, you're still being kind of thrust into stories and relationships that won't necessarily make sense, with the exception of Shadowbringers as a kind of restarting point that they did mid ARR to Endwalker, story. And no better proof of this is Chris himself, who started the story with Shadowbringers, and how that was a good new way to reintroduce the existing characters and develop relationships with characters. And for those of us who have been playing, we had a much more profound experience, but it was a really good re-entry point to stepping into the story. And from that inspired him to go back and play through the entirety of the story, which you can go do and you can check out on his channels that he has played through the ARR through Endwalker story completely. Now, that being said, I honestly think of it in two ways. I'm gonna speculate on what I would like to see as a part of a new player experience, but I don't want to put that pressure or expectation on them. So I'm not expecting them to do that. But if they do that, that's a real win in my book. And we'll talk about what that could look like here in a second. What I would kind of, expect at this point with a new starting experience and purchase of the game, not the free trial, which is ARR through Stormblood this October, and that's when the beta for Xbox, but we're really talking about spring 2024. With all of that kind of in the works, I could see them selling the game with a boost. And I don't know how you guys feel about that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of boosts, but they exist, people use them, I'm not judging them, and they fund the game. All right, all that being said, I could see them again selling Dawntrail. Maybe it's a collector's edition version, maybe it's that expanded version with a boost that gets you all the way up to the story of Dawntrail. Now, what I do hope that they do, regardless, is they take a chapter from Final Fantasy XI, from Dragon Quest XI, which had this story so far. Give the players the option to watch a story so far, whether that's an anime, whether that's some kind of summary. But in game, when they boot it up, they can say, hey, do you want to know what's been going on this whole time? And if you do, here is a 2-hour the story so far kind of aspect. And if they did something like of that nature, I think that solves the biggest problem of even if somebody decides to start the game with 7.0 and the story with 7.0, there's a lot of history that is missed. Why are we going to the new world? And I worry because I don't want it to be so toned down to the veterans that the language and everything is very like hand-holdy, like, oh, we're going to the new world. Like, everybody who's been playing and paying attention this far should have a good concept of what this place is, what it means to the history and lore of the game. And who knows, maybe we'll go some other places as well. We'll find out more in October. But that all being said, let's talk about, so I kind of expect that. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the solution, because it kind of at this point makes sense. You're finishing a saga, you give them a story so far summary, and then boom, bada bing, bada boom, we're off into 7.0. Now, all right, let's go ahead and talk about the new player experience. I would love to see that as an option. I think obviously beyond the, kind of the story summary, the new player experience of the game, stepping in, kind of being able to be introduced to these characters through another ethereal plane. I don't know what, like, there's so many shards. It could always be that. And then essentially being able to step into level, in this case would be, you'd start at level 90 and then you'd go to 100. You don't want somebody stepping into as a level 1 and then jumping in there, but you do want to have that experience. So you kind of think of it almost that the new player experience would be that level of accelerated leveling that really just pushes you to level 90 on one, class, almost acting like a boost. And then therefore you step into it. You've been introduced to the characters. You've done some fights. You've really kind of had, the grease put on the wheels, and you're able to now step into and go into the new world. That's, I think, essentially is something that I do expect to happen at some point. I don't know if that's going to happen here, but it wouldn't be a negative in my book if they decided to have a new player experience starting point for not just the Xbox players who are joining the fray, but for those of you like me who've been on this break for so long, that have stepped away from the game for so long and coming back. And speaking of which, like, I'm still not actively playing it. I still have, I think, some amount of weight to lose to get to that magical, mythical 100-pound loss that I'm chasing after. And once that is in the books, then absolutely ready to reinstall, resubscribe, and step back into the game itself, which I think will be exciting to play through the story. Now, I want to address one final thought before we wrap up, and maybe this deserves its own topic here at some point. Somebody was asking that, but what about all the issues that I've raised with my issues with Final Fantasy XIV up to this point? Those still do exist. The plan here is literally to play the game the way Yoshi P recommends, not as a job, but as somebody who's going to focus and find the fun. And that's why you're not going to see me working on every controller guide going forward. I'm just going to put out the stuff that I'm enjoying and leave it at that. So necessarily that it's, I'm going to find the fun. And that does mean future breaks and future stepping away from the games are absolutely on the table. It's just a matter of like, if the best way to play Final Fantasy XIV is every 2 years for 3 to 4 months plus, and dabbling with it from time to time with the community, that's the best thing. And we're going to do that because I think we want to try to encourage a healthy gaming consumption. And that's kind of how I play Destiny. And that's kind of how, like, you got to start to think about it. It's like being able to play a game for a little bit every now and then ends up being a lot more enjoyable. But right now I'm just hyped for Starfield, and that's going to be on the way. And Baldur's Gate 3 is absolutely amazing. If you guys haven't had the chance to play it, mwah, chef's kiss. Good job, Larian. Anyway, Chris, Workforce, thanks for joining me on this vlog. Happy birthday, happy anniversary once again to everybody who's hit that subscribe button. Appreciate y'all being here. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and I did say I thought I'd talk about, almost ended the video. I did say I'd talk about some of the ideas I have for the future. And essentially right now you're seeing the vlogs. That's coming back. We'll see if Chris is able to jump in and do some of that. He's still getting adjusted to his work schedule. We're going to be doing the podcast on Thursday. I think here in 2 weeks, I'm going to move Epic Loot Radio as my Ginger Prime podcast here to this channel and use Work to Game as this community discussion, topic, and focus in on a couple of key points with Epic Loot Radio, so you can tune in live here at Work to Game, and we'll clip those things up and have a lot of fun with that, bring in different people. The hardest part about podcasting is scheduling, so I'm pretty lazy at that. So I'm not going to commit to an every week show, but we'll see how that goes. And then ideally you'll see some stuff from Chris, and obviously some more stuff over at Gaming Kinda, but that's all just going to be based off of how his work schedule goes and really what he wants to create. This isn't like a pressure. Like I told him, I was like, feel free to respond to a vlog or don't. Like I'm just going to keep popping him out there, and we can see what he has to say when he has to say it. So guys, look forward to when Chris posts his videos. Look forward to when you guys hopefully we'll see you this Thursday for the podcast. And if you guys have topics like this, sound off in Discord, sound off in the comments below, hit me up on DMs, hit me up on Twitter. All are good choices. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. Now I wish you all the very best, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But until then, take care.